All right, I just want to pick up where we we
I
left off.
forgot what I was going to say.
Forget trying to be like, hi
Everything
everyone,
we were going to
welcome to
say.
morning Scarby
Yeah.
stream. Forget that. I just want to, because we got good vibes going on there. And by the way, Paul, that was I kind of did that new intro with you in mind. I was like thinking of, I don't want to say,
Go ahead and say it.
smoking something that kind of relaxes you and.
And you thought pothead? That must be Paul Rossi.
Yeah, that was a very well. I
did my share of bongs in in my
reefers
college years and reefers and Mary Janes. Yeah.
The one I like your very off the grid vibe. That's what I'm saying, and that was that intro was a nod to that. That the guitar and kind of hippy dippy kind of thing. But anyway, so we were having an interesting pre-show talk, and I just want to continue that about what's happening. My perception of the people that are making up the Libertarian Party. And I was saying that there is a influential group within the Libertarian Party that's for open borders and UBI and trans so-called rights. And their lead nominee back then was Chase
Oliver, was it? Yeah. I mean, was he was the nominee for 2020 latest election? But there are a lot of, as you might expect, there's lots of factions within Libertarian Party. There's the left libertarians. There's the Free State people that I'm with in New Hampshire up here. There's the free market libertarians. There's cultural libertarians. There's all kinds of strains, and they all cross pollinate. But in general, like the libertarians that I'm that I hang out with occasionally when we're not being assholes to each other, is these are the more of the free marketarians, non-government intervention. And there is if you want to be trans, be trans. You want to give your kid surgery, go for it, right? Like, I just don't fuck with me, Jack. Like, that's also part of that thing. Although there's also a more conservative spectrum of that, where people are like, no, like that's morally wrong, and certainly the state shouldn't fund it. But also there's a huge diaspora of libertarianism cross-pollinated with various strains of conservatism, and that's really a lot of fun, actually, when you're talking to people, because you can't assume people are going to agree with you. You enjoy it when people push back on you. People have their various things that they're into. But yeah, UBI, I haven't personally met any libertarians that are for UBI, but that maybe I'm just missing it. Maybe there is somebody. Was Chase Oliver for UBI?
Yes, there were for a lot of UBI people, and I think we started talking about. I'm sorry for if you're just coming in this late. We had the pre-show talking about Jeffrey Tucker, Mr. Bolton. He's a figure in. Would he say he's libertarian, or he's more about free market, as you would say? Like, he didn't. I don't think I've ever heard him call himself a libertarian.
Who? Jeffrey?
I don't know. I don't know much about his.
Jeffrey's a very free market guy. He's worked at various free market Clearwater type
think tanks
things. And he was the one that put together the Great Barrington Declaration, which was one of probably the most important thing during COVID. But that was through AEIR. I always get the acronyms mixed up. But that's a sort of an Austrian, libertarianish kind of group. So, but he's not. I don't think he's like Mr. Libertarian, like you're going to get at PorcFest. I actually went to PorcFest in 2020, during COVID, because it was one of the few places that was like, screw you, no masks, come on.
Oh yeah.
And I went. I knew nobody. I just drove up by myself. I knew Jeffrey was going to be there, but it turns out he was going to be there on the last day, and I was there on like the first few days or something. And I hung out with some people. I went around. There were like these, like little presentations and people selling stuff. And like I learned, how to compost and things.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good part of it. I mean, they teach you. They have a lot of artisanal. Yeah, I mean, it's got that sort of. There's this thing.
It's very crunchy. It's very granola-y. It's very
crunchy and DIY or focused, and like how to like.
Yeah, it's very indie, very DIY. Yeah, it's good. And a lot of campers. And Jeremy Kaufman was there, who is pretty prominent in the the libertarian community. And per Paul's point, the libertarians, there is a pretty big spectrum. I actually kind of thought maybe I was a libertarian at some point, but libertarians have this thing where they get into these battles about who's the more pure, who's the purist, and if you stray, it sort of whittles itself down into like one or two people eventually, right? I know Jeremy's slightly controversial. He's a bit of a firebrand. But I actually really dig kind of his takes. Like he's very libertarian on most things, but he's also a fan of, like, for instance, local zoning, right? Which is, a lot of libertarians are open borders. They're against local zoning. And, these are things where I couldn't personally say that I'm a libertarian. It's like, I think nations have to have borders. Nations are, what happens when people naturally coagulate and based on culture and various other issues, and they're like, hey, we're a thing, right? You can be your thing, but we're our thing, and we're going to protect our thing. I think that's human nature. And a lot of that, a lot of doctrinaire libertarians are against that. They want sort of this one world, kumbaya bullshit that's not based in reality. And
totally agree.
Yeah, and that's sort of, just at least in my opinion, there's several things where the doctrinaire libertarians, the rubber meets the road, and reality slaps them in the fucking face. It's like a lot of those pie in the sky things just don't work.
People are not economic chits, that just move on the board. Yes. And it's not like this. I mean, that's not what human beings are. I mean, in some ways it's as naive and unconstrained a vision as the left has about people singing Kumbaya and holding hands after the revolution. Like it really is. It really does not account for human realities.
It's interesting. Right? Yeah, it's interesting both of you brought that up, because I was disqualified from, I started out when I got interested in politics, and I just gravitated to the whole vibe and aesthetics of libertarians, right? But later on, as we were going to 2020 and the issues of globalism came up, and borders, and the new world order economics versus, America First type economics. So I was entirely disqualified on being called a libertarian on that account, because I like you, Paul, there are realities that I think that many, I guess, main denomination libertarians, if we can call them, are just not.
So I would call them like doctrinaire libertarian.
Doctrinaire libertarian, yeah.
But there are a lot of people who are quasi-libertarian that like I am, that you do acknowledge these things, and like Eric said, that there's an ideal state size or state purview that is less than what we have now, but not completely eliminated. That there are definitely things that it needs to do. But we're all on board the same project, which is to shrink the intrusion of the state. You're right. I mean, it's less than it is now, because now it's ridiculous.
So this is where I get into I have these, I don't know, esoteric or ideological arguments with doctrinaire libertarians, because I had to explain to them that on open borders, my problem with open borders is, or maybe just not just open borders, is mass migration too, right? Is that you are bringing in people who are culturally programmed to look up to big government from other cultures, and that they're not going to change, even though they can become American citizens, but right down to the fourth generation, that's their mindset. So like people in East Asia and people from South India and other societies, if you bring them in, they're going to vote the way their culture has programmed to vote, or have this attitude about government. It's not, you would never get them to think libertarian. Never.
Yeah, and people, I mean, that's one thing, but there's also just they don't have, there's certain habits, right? They may aspire to things, aspire to all the things that America has, but their habits are not ingrained in things like rule of law or fairness in contracts or
yes,
the basics of civil life that we hold dear, that have been negotiated over and fought over for centuries in Europe, right? So like it's not part of their, and that's not to denigrate it in any way. It's just different, right? So like, if you want to have a self-sustaining polity, you don't, you have to be judicious about restricting entry. Like, I don't know how you get around that.
And not only that, it's in the Constitution, right? It's one of the few things that the federal government is supposed to do. And, back to doctrinaire libertarianism, my issue with it, I'd be in these discussions and these arguments with people that believe this and say, well, you're in the wrong country. Like, we have rules, like we have a constitution, that's one of the, it's not that complicated, right? So like, you can't pretend that like, I mean, you can want no rules, I guess, but like, this is not the place for you. It's not it's not the DNA of this place. I say the same thing to the people that that are like the progressives, the socialists that are like, this place needs, capitalism sucks, blah, 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 and private property, fuck that. And it's like, you're in the wrong country, bro. I don't say bro hardly ever. That's the first time I said bro. Decades. Bro. Yeah. The kids say bro all the time.
So the kind of bros that I have these discussions with are I'm glad you use the word bro, because they happen to be they call passport bros. Have you heard the term passport bros?
What is I've heard it, but what is it?
Passport bros, they are almost always libertarians, but they are people who don't believe that they're born in America, but they believe that in free trade and in free markets. So they will go to whatever country has the system that is most optimal for their financial success. So
so like nomad capitalists.
Yes, like a capitalist, and
right.
But that's their kind of ethos. So this is where I always have these debates and arguments it's mostly with passport pros, explaining to them that you like you may go to, let's say, I know Chile, right? Chile, for a time, it was a place where all these passport libertarian bros go because it was better to do a startup there, and you don't have to pay taxes there.
UAE, they like the UAE is good. Vietnam is actually another destination. I know these guys too. And the thing is, they're fine. Like, if you can live like an aristocrat and jet set around, go for it. Like, I have no problem with it. But or
even like a less than aristocrat. Somebody who can survive with minimal stuff. And
I guess like a minocrat or something.
Yeah, man.
That's so Shanghai and Hong Kong, like a decade ago, was another popular destination. So it's interesting
more
that they would call themselves libertarian, but they did not have an opinion about the places they would go to and the regime that made capitalism or a version of capitalism favorable for them. So, and I think that's how they think about the U.S. too. Like, the borders are optional. It's like, if I can succeed here in Chile or in Shanghai, why do we need to have borders? Because there's a global economics that would benefit all of us.
Now, do these bros have families? Do they have kids? Do they put down technically no, right? Okay, so this is the thing. Like, yes, it's another form of naivety. Like, people are fundamentally tribal. Okay, you are not going to get around that. And when you have communities where you actually put down roots and you're not just sort of, doing like eternal airport life or whatever it is on this level, which is you're moving through time and space, having lots of fun, meeting lots of people. Great. But like, it's not exactly how identity is formed. And we do have a real desire, like if you, especially if you have kids, you want to have a kind of an identity in a community, right? There's this idea of network states, which is something interesting, where you can have, theoretically, you can have these communities that are digital and transnational, and you have sovereignty within them. But okay, fine. Like when the first army comes, I'm sorry, they're going to smash your servers and you're going to be shit out of luck. So like, I don't really think that there's a lot to that. Like it's a nice idea, but like, okay, you can get your little island, you can have your archipelagos of belief, but okay, when push comes to shove, you're going to get wiped out unless you have, a kind of a compensating, maybe asymmetric cyber warfare thing on your side, but you need some kind of way to defend yourself, or else you're not going to last. But yeah, I don't know what you guys think.
Well, that's something to bring up in the next Pork Fest. I guess you guys have your own little stand and table about the necessity for meat space. I call it meat space versus digital space.
And I mean, I would say most libertarians believe in that, because hence why else would you need guns? I mean, that's what all the guns are for, right? The meat space.
Yeah. I came up with the term meat space because we have another someone in the NDR circle. We were toying around with blockchain back during lockdown, and I think after a few iterations, we realized that even blockchain itself is vulnerable to, like you just said, Paul. They can just come in and bust up your server, and there goes your digital nomad network thing. So everything is very susceptible to meat space actors.
But I would say that the world needs libertarians. A lot of my friends are libertarians. I tend to be libertarian-ish conservative. Like there's definitely some good stuff there. But it has to work within the confines of the Constitution, right? I guess you used the word minikerist earlier, Paul. That's what is that? It's like the least amount of government necessary in order to keep society rolling, right? Like I've kind of come to that conclusion. I think that anything else is just automatically corrupt, and even that minimal amount of government is going to become corrupt. And that's what the founding fathers knew. They were like, it's going to go to shit. So, whatever we do, no matter how good the people are that we put in, it's always going to turn sour. So we got to keep it as small as possible.
Wait, so I'm an off the boat immigrant. Is it minarchist or minarchist? Am I
saying it right?
Well, I just kind of threw it out, but actually minarchism is it's a particular thing in the neo-reactionary movement, like the Curtis Yarvin thing, where you have a monarch, but the monarch is doesn't try to be a totalitarian. He does like the least amount of government, but that's often bandied around in those circles. I just meant sort of that's like, it doesn't have to be a monarch. It just means like the least amount. It could be a democratic form of representational, whatever, but it's just like the least intrusive government.
I saw a libertarian meme about Milei the other day because he's doing great. In Argentina, like he's really just, it's amazing. Like even people that were vehemently against him are reluctantly having to say like, it's working, whatever he's doing is working. But of course there's still some doctrinaire, Clearwater people that are like, he's not doing enough. And the meme said, Milei, anarcho-capitalist in the sheets. What was it? Anarcho-capitalist in the streets, a minikerist in the sheets. So it's like, what do you want? How perfect do you need this guy to be?
Yeah,
that's why libertarians be the sheets.
Really,
I will say though that here in New Hampshire, the Free State Project, which is particular, they run PorkFest. It's their particular thing.
I'm on that. I've been on that list for a long time. I know those guys.
Tremendous success lately in state government. I mean, they're getting stuff passed. They have. 100 representatives in the state house. They've got 5 senators out of 22 in the Senate.
Wait,
they're
under what party?
A Republican. So they've integrated with Republicans.
So I like
somewhat.
that.
Yeah,
They basically occupied the host, but now they have and the you know, the what do you call it? The rhinos basically have had to work with them, and because they represent a vocal grassroots constituency. I mean, the way they got this inspection, they got car inspections removed this year. No car inspections starting January.
That's amazing.
And the way they got it was brilliant. Like, there's a lot of really smart people in this group. Like, they basically went through Manchester, largest town in New Hampshire. They found every car without an inspection sticker, and they put flyers on it saying, call your representative, because they knew that, like, people don't get inspected because, first of all, it is a scam, because every time you go, or, there's so many reports when you go. This happened to me. They find some little thing and then they charge you for it, and it's just an extraction scheme. So they were smart. And they're getting real things done.
But it's interesting because they have been working with the Republicans. They've essentially, and this was the argument for years. Within the Libertarian Party, it was like, do we, they had these, pie in the sky hopes and dreams of making the Libertarian Party a national force. We see every election that it's just not, it's just that it's always something. And then this last cycle, the fact that they invited Donald Trump to speak was a big deal. There were still some internal gnashings over whether or not to align with the Republicans, but the Libertarians in general have aligned with Republicans and MAGA to an extent. And I always felt like that was if you had to choose a home, that was the natural home for Libertarians. It's not a perfect fit. There's a lot of problems with the establishment, GOP, with the rhinos, even conservative Republicans, don't necessarily, mesh exactly with Libertarians all the time. But in my opinion, it was the obvious fit. And they have been, to your point, they have been doing this. And when they had Trump come and speak at the Libertarian Convention, it was very interesting because Trump,
he was booed, right? He was booed pretty heavily.
He was booed, but he did well. Like, he didn't kowtow too much. And that's, I think that's where the Mises, what was that guy's name? Michael Rechtenwald, right? He was the Mises caucus for the Libertarian, nod. And he was the one that took edibles before he gave his speech. And he goes on stage and he just disintegrates and just starts babbling and everybody's like, what? And so he lost.
Edibles ain't shit.
Yeah, it's such a Libertarian thing to do. Just to get.
Well, it's funny. Like, the one thing that got Trump a lot of Libertarian votes,
he did,
was the Ross Ulbricht, when he, someone got to Trump and said, if you say free Ross Ulbricht, you will get, like, that's the thing that will get you. And he said that in the speech, and people went nuts. And Ross was freed, not on day one, like you said, but day 2. So,
pretty good.
He promises made, promises kept.
They're good. They're a good force, I think, in general in American politics, and I support them in general.
Well, I'm happy and surprised to hear that the Libertarians in New Hampshire are so well organized. My experience hasn't been like that with Libertarians here in New York. I find that they don't tend to know how to organize, and they spend more time on X lecturing what is true Libertarian and what is not. And even among themselves, they don't know how to get together. It's just this thing about Libertarians and then forget about trying to work with the system. They always want to reinvent the wheel. And I always have to remind them, well, you look at people like AOC and Mandani and all these people, right? They understand you don't invent a party in the middle of the race. You just infiltrate what's there. So why what's your problem with trying to work with, what's available? Why do you want to build a new car in the middle of the race? But it's hard to get through. Anyway,
and, libertarians also tend to be black-pilled. So, like, even here in the state, like, even with all the success that they're having, the leadership of Free State Project, they have to constantly, market to their own constituents, be like, no, we're actually doing real stuff. And it's like, nah, there's this attitude of a lot of people here that are quote unquote liberty minded, that it's hard for them to believe that they're actually, their own leadership is being as successful as it is. So I think you get that everywhere.
Yeah. Yep. So let's move along and roast some headlines. Is there a way for people to like comments here on I don't know how this works on X, wherever we are broadcasting? Well, I just want to say that if you can chime in, please post your comment if there's a way for you to do it, and we will showcase it. But I had titled this episode, "How Will Fed Interest Rates Decision Impact U.S. Economy and You?" And it's very serendipitous that we started off talking about libertarians, because I know this is one thing that really annoys libertarians is the Feds. And someone who doesn't know a thing about, maybe our resident economics guy, and Paul can explain to me, why is this a big deal and why should we pay attention to Jerome Powell's decision? How does it affect my ability to buy eggs or save or whatever?
This is important, yeah. And I just want to, we should definitely spend some time on the Durham Annex, though.
That's true, too. That'll be the third one.
Maybe the third one we can do that, but yeah. Let's go ahead and you want to lay it down, Aaron?
Yeah, I'll just super quick. I think that here, the first thing you got to do with this is you have to put aside whether or not you want a Fed, right? Like, because you're talking about libertarians, leading into this. There's certainly people that are like, it shouldn't exist. And here's why. It's like, all right, look, this is the system that we have for now. I'm for auditing the Fed. I don't like how it's set up. I'm not sure we should go back to the gold standard that had problems too. That said, we are in this system. We have a Fed. They have a dual mandate. Again, they should not have a dual mandate, but they do. It's inflation and employment. And I've been saying this forever. A lot of people say this too, but Trump wants lower interest rates because that's essentially like crack steroids for the economy. There's a reason why we have not had, 1% interest rates ever since the Fed was formed. There's a reason they're not always low, right? There's downsides to hyper low rates. There's downsides to super high rates. There's also plus sides to super high rates, and there's plus sides to super low rates. The demand to lower interest rates right now from the Trump administration, I believe, is two-pronged. It is, number one, they know that the economy that they were given is not great. It's very wonky in a lot of ways. Trump's economic package, which is, cut regulation, cut taxes, it's pro-growth. I'm for that. Yeah, it's laugher stuff. That's supply side stuff. It works. That's what Malay's doing. You cut government, give money back to the people, feed the economic engine, yay, let's do that. He also wants the lower interest rates, essentially pour gasoline on the smoldering fire. And he also wants the lower interest rates for the debt. I get it. The issue that I have, and we don't have to go into it, but to claim that lower interest rates is going to help the housing market is a lie. The Fed interest rates do influence mortgage rates to a large degree, but other things do as well. But hyper low mortgage rates are a big reason as to why housing is so expensive and we're in this mess to begin with. Obviously, housing is more expensive now than it should be because of that. Also inflation, also taxes, also insurance. There's more than enough housing. The supply, housing crisis talk is bullshit. There are also, 30 million illegal immigrants who are living to a large degree in the affordable lower end housing that we claim that we so desperately need. So push those issues aside. Trump wants these rates lowered. Powell's not doing it. Powell did it last year for Biden. It was a very political move. Based on the numbers, Powell should not have lowered interest rates last year, but he did to give Biden, again, that little bit of gasoline. It didn't work. But essentially what Trump is doing is he's saying, look, I need this to complete my economic package. also to, refinance a lot of the debt. That's a pretty compelling argument. This morning, right before we started the show, there were really bad numbers, big revisions on job numbers for the last, two quarters. And they were revised down by tens of thousands. And in one case, over 100,000 job. It's bad. Like everybody's like, holy shit. The Fed meeting was yesterday, and they announced that they were not only not raising rates, but they're probably not going to raise them in September. And the market kind of went down a little bit yesterday. This morning it's down pretty good. Trump also, is doing some tariff stuff. So it's a little bit complicated there, but the Fed is a complicated issue. But I think that because of these job numbers, he's going to have to lower rates in September, even though he claimed he wasn't.
Jerome Powell has to lower rates.
I do. And again, I argue that rates right now, was it 4.5? That's not low. That's not high. That's medium low, right? Historically. It's just that, Trump and his economic team, and again, I think that they're right. I think that they know that the underlying economy is not in the greatest health. And it's almost like if you're sick or you've gotten in an accident or something, and when the doctor gives you steroids, they help you heal, they help you go. But when you're healthy and you're doing great, they're not good for you. They hurt your body. They give you testicular cancer. I mean, there's all sorts of, problems with steroids. So, I would think that, based on these job numbers, which are pretty catastrophic, everybody's asking the question, like, how was this allowed to happen? Who measures these things? It's a major drop. It's pretty big news.
So, Paul, let me pass the mic to you. How would you explain to someone who don't usually track things like Fed interest rate? How do you explain to them in under a minute why does this concern them? Why does lower interest rate or high interest rate
under a minute?
Okay, so like it's the cost of capital. So when if you want to start a business, you want to do things, right? You have to borrow money to do it, right? And Eric, you can jump in and correct me if I get any of this wrong. So when everything flows from the federal funds rate, so if we have a 4.25% interest rate, the higher that number goes, the more incentive there is to actually save and put it into money market funds or treasury bonds and things like that. When the number goes down, when interest rates go down, then it makes more sense to borrow and stimulate the economy. So that's how the mechanism of raising and lowering rates historically, I'm not sure it does this much anymore, historically stimulates or contracts the economy, right? Higher rates contract the economy because people are saving more. Lower rates stimulate the economy because people are borrowing more and invest starting plants and doing more business with that capital.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
And I would argue that they often use lower rates, like when we went to hyper low rates, QE, quantitative easing, after the housing, after the .com bubble, and then also after the housing crisis, and then again in 2000. I mean, crazy low rates, almost 0%. What Japan was 0%. There were places in Europe that were under. But that allows the system to sort of flush out bad risk. Right. Because there's a lot. What you said is generally, true. But there are, things that happen when you have low rates for too long. Private equity, gets way over its skis. It creates like bubbles and things that can be very catastrophic and very, damaging to the economy. So it's sort of like safety and security on the one hand with higher rates, where people, again, can live off their savings account. Seniors, by the way, higher interest rates are really good for seniors, people that have, retired and are living off interest from savings. That's not a bad thing. You know what I mean? That's good. But when the rate comes down, they don't have any money. They have to get risky. It's a good thing when a lot of people are invested in the stock market. Honestly, okay. You know what I mean? I think that that's a good thing for society. More people have more skin in the game. But yeah, it's
Now, I don't know whether that whole mechanism, I agree with everything you said, but I just wanted to add one little thing. that whole mechanism of raising rates to contract the economy, lowering rates to stimulate, I don't know whether that even works anymore, because there's so much stimulus going on with the fiscal picture. So the government is spending so much money, trillions of dollars a year, that it actually is now such a significant part of the economy that it's like our deficits are such that we're not actually, if we raise the rates, we're not actually slowing the economy because we're still spending so much. And the more we spend, the more debt we have. So there's a point where it's called fiscal dominance, this idea that monetary policy is no longer able to move the levers in the same way that it did in the 80s or 90s, for example. So it's unclear whether for every quarter basis or basis point movement, there was you could actually predict some effect on the economy. That's no longer true because there's this thing muddying the waters now, which is the massive government expenditures.
And hold on, just to add to this, you're exactly right. And what happened during Biden when they cranked up the rates so much at the very beginning, or actually in the middle, was because of inflation. Love Trump, but he signed the CARES Act. That was a huge amount of money added to the money supply. It was a lot of government spending. Biden came in and he doubled, tripled down, trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. And the Fed was in this weird position, again, with a dual mandate, right? Employment, it's weird. It's very, very messy, especially with modern monetary theory, right? Which is Keynesianism on steroids. But what the Fed was in a position to do, because inflation was so bad, they hiked up rates to try and harm the economy, to mitigate the effects of the inflation. It was bonkers.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Volcker did, right? In the 80s. He raised it to like 20% or something. And we don't have the stomach for that anymore.
Just so I'm tracking here, and on behalf of people who, again, this is not a topic that they always follow, specific to job creation, for example. So are we saying that the big idea is that when the Fed lower interest rate, employers are more likely to borrow and fund their business, therefore maybe their payroll, they will keep their payroll because they get to borrow more? Is that the idea that that's
the idea? Yeah. So if employment numbers are bad, that puts pressure on the Fed to lower rates, which will stimulate the economy and there'll be more hiring. That's exactly
crack steroids.
Yeah. Is that a fact, or is that like more like a crapshoot kind of thing?
Well, it has been. I think it has worked in the past, but because of this fiscal dominance thing, I'm not sure it's going to move the needle as much, because already, depending, I don't know how much they shrank the government, but if that's still going on, it's unclear that it will have as much of an effect as it used to have.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. So do you? Okay, so I'm trying to understand the rounds of layoffs in my industry, for example, in advertising. I'm very curious to know how that is somewhat affected by the interest rates, the Fed interest rate. Like, are my employers, do they keep, is the payroll kept alive by borrowing from, is it funded by credit? I guess I wouldn't know. I don't have access to their books, but that's the idea, right? That
what's going on? I mean, every sector has its own little nuances. Like, what's happening in your business, in your sector right now?
Just round-offs. I mean, layoffs. Every quarter, like before the new quarter starts. So I'm just trying to connect the dots here. I don't know if the macroeconomics is how that. I think it helps for people to understand when they read a news like Jerome Powell, who he is, like, whose side are you supposed to be taking on? Is he supposed to, do what Trump tells him to do and lower interest rate, and that will help things hum along? Or like you said, it just doesn't matter at this point. Like, things are so messed up.
Well, there are people who are like, oh, the Fed is independent and we need to preserve the independence. So like Trump can't, but that's all bullshit anyway, because they're not really independent. So, there are reasons why Trump might be wrong, why lowering interest rates might be bad, because it's both good and bad.
But what is both of your opinions? So let me start with Eric. What, lower or not lower interest rate? Like, what should we?
Prior to this morning, I was against lowering. I think that again, there are plus sides to having rates not be low. Right, low rates. We've had low rates for way too long. Right, that was a big part of my opinion. Right, which is we've had low since 2000 for the last 25 years, quarter century. We've had some of the lowest rates in history ever for the most of that time. And if you look at the ways the economy is kind of wonky, the housing market is fucked up. You know, a lot of the stuff that is sort of structurally wrong in our economy can be traced back to those hyper low interest rates. Because what Paul says, again, in theory, in general, it's true. It's when you lower that Fed interest rate, that window rate, it lowers the cost of capital in borrowing, and it allows people to take more chances and to get out there and create more economic activity. Now you're talking about an ad agency. I don't know, borrowing money to, create a new, AI unit wing or something. They'd be more likely to make that investment in their company if the money's really cheap. It's very similar to the same impetus you would have if there's a 0% financing on a car versus 5% financing on a car.
To buy. I want to spend. Okay.
That said, the lower interest rate does raise the price to a degree, right? Because if you're not like people, both sides of the equation know that the interest rate is lower, right? So you take housing, for instance. If the house is, $800,000 and the interest rate, the mortgage rate, again, it's not the same thing, but if the mortgage rate is currently what, 6.5%, that's a bigger monthly payment than if the selling price was 800,000 and the mortgage rate was 4. That said, things don't work that way, right? Buyers, all of a sudden are like, hey, the interest rate's lower. They go on the Zillow calculator and it's like, what is going to be my monthly payment for this $800,000 house, right? With that 4%, they go, okay, it's going to be $1,500 less a month to buy this house with this 4% interest rate. Well, the seller knows that too. And so the seller will be like, well, I'm not going to come down in price. The interest rate's going down. I'll go up. And that's what's happened. And that's what happens in various industries to other degrees as well. When money's cheaper, when it's cheaper to borrow, when money's cheaper, there's always a flip side.
Okay.
Like take college loans, for instance. I mean, that's government controlled, but it's like that is almost unlimited free money for college. Colleges know that. Mm-hmm. They can charge whatever they want. And they've done it. They've done exactly that.
That's why it's counterproductive to have all these subsidized loans, because it just, on the back end, the suppliers take advantage of it.
Right. The suppliers know.
Because they know it's going to stimulate demand. And so the demand goes up, the price goes up.
So, Paul, what about you? I mean, like, if someone who's new to this topic, should they be sharing on lowering interest rate or keeping interest rate as is, raising it? Like, what would you say? What's your?
I probably would agree with Eric. I mean, I really thought keep rates where they are until today.
Okay.
And I think the poly market on the Fed lowering rates in September. Do you know what it was, Eric? Because I'm sure it's gone up since today. But that's a thing that they try to project what the Fed will do, and then they price in the anticipated move, right? And so, like, stocks are down today, but I think it's going to rebound, because in a week or two, they're going to price in the anticipation that Fed is going to lower rates, which means that they're going to the market will front run that expectation, or that result, with the expectation that they're going to lower rates. Because it's almost like when the economy is bad, the anticipation that the Fed will respond actually drives up asset prices, because there's an anticipation that, they're going to fix this problem. So all that to say, yeah, I basically think they need to lower rates because of this report. That's what it comes down to.
It looks like Polymarket agrees with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, I think for a lot of people who are new to this topic, if they wanted to take out a loan for the first time to buy a house, this would affect their decision, right? Whether interest rates.
Yeah. So they might say, but then you also have to look at probably the things in the housing market. There are a lot of things that affect the housing market. So like boomers are dying. Okay. So boomers own a lot more than, like, I think they own twice as many houses as they have households. If you take a look at them as a group. So them dying off means that those assets are going to hit the market. Like those homes are going to hit the market, which is going to drive down, it's going to increase supply, which will drive down the prices. And you're also, removing on the lower end of the scale, you're removing illegals from the equation. So a lot of people are saying like the housing market is peaking. But people are saying that for a while. I mean, if you lower the interest rates, then more people are going to buy houses as investments. And so like, there's just a lot of moving parts to the housing market. And you kind of have to look at the whole picture if you're going to buy a home. And you have to look at the particular area you want to buy. I mean,
it's regional.
Everything is very granular, right? So like right now in Las Vegas, it looks terrible, right? In New Hampshire, it's extremely robust. It seems,
even though New Hampshire has very high property taxes.
Yeah, because it's an attractive place to live. It's the only New England state that has, no state income tax and no investment tax. Like, and so you have a lot of people at the top of the market that want to move here, and that drives up the prices at the top of the market. And there's also a lot of zoning here, which there is a big debate in the libertarian community about zoning. Some people think it's good, some people think it's bad. But there's a lot of zoning here, which prevents new house building and limits the amount of renters you can have in a particular space and all this other stuff. So like, but the point is, it's very granular. So if you're looking in Charlotte, North Carolina, it's going to be very different than like looking in Tempe, Arizona, or like there's so many different things going on.
Everybody's against it. Well, people are against zoning until somebody builds a hog farm next door.
Right.
Right.
It's yes. Yeah, and that's why we have, you can have chickens here in my town. You can't have pigs. So when I have chickens, I can build a little coop. I can have ducks. I can even have horses, but no pigs. Pigs are bad, or they're unsavory.
So I hope that answers the question that I have that caption the bottom of the screen. How does the Fed interest rate impact you personally? And thank you for that layman explanation. The Fed interest rate is a way for the government to incentivize people to move capital in the market voluntarily or not. Am I correct? Did I summarize that correctly? It's a way to turn on the tap and turn off the tap.
Yep.
And when we can have
not without risk.
Mm-hmm.
I stand by crack steroids. I think it's the perfect, perfect analog.
Without risk, okay.
Yeah.
But
crack steroids probably feels incredible.
When you say crack steroid, I mean credit, like credit, right?
I'm talking QE, like hyper low interest rates in order to spur economic growth per
lending and buying.
All laid out. Is
buying on credit,
is steroids on crack. It's literally pumping jet fuel into the economy. Again, it's just the point.
It also interesting. Yeah, it also allows big businesses like Amazon to like run lower interest rate, like zero interest rates. It allows them to run at a loss for a long period of time, just to accumulate. Consider like Amazon would have gone out of business a long time ago. Right. If it wasn't for zero interest rates, because it's so cheap to borrow. Like they don't have to pay any interest. They can borrow and borrow and borrow. Their interest payments are so low. They can just explode their operation, put everybody else out of business. And then, their stock price zooms up because then you also have a lot of money in the system. And so like that has to go somewhere. So you're going to inflate the stock price. So that's part of the perverse thing that's going on. That Eric was referring to.
And what you were saying is it dissuades saving. It dissuades other means of sort of managing money, and it drives people into equities, into risky investments and things because they're less risky. And again, it's not a bad thing that happens, but there are significant downsides. And if you do it for too long, it creates structural problems. And I still contend, and others contend, that a lot of what we're wrestling with now, along with AI, along with, tens of millions of illegals, there's other structural issues that play into this. But having rates so low for so long, sort of hollowed out and like made things hinky that shouldn't be hinky. And we're dealing with that right now. And that's why the reluctance, right? Like, oh my God, these hyper low rates created a lot of this. And, Trump's answer, big part of his answer is to lower rates again. But again, I get the theory. I get it. And especially after today, it's like, fine, cut the shit out of it for a while. Let's ride it and see where it goes. Cause the economy there's something, there's still stuff that's not right about it.
So people are not really necessarily building equity, but capital is moving via the system of borrowing and credit. Did I summarize that correctly? It's just money is moving around, or they want to get a move around, but people are not building real actual equity because there's a lot of easy credit.
The money's not just moving around; it's actually being created because of the fractional reserve system. So like when the emissions are low, it's not like the money is sitting in a vault and they like dole it out. They're actually creating it out of thin air when you take out a loan, right? Because they have to have a certain amount of capital reserves. I don't know what that is. Like it used to be 10%. So like you're actually injecting a ton of money into the money supply when you lower rates. So it's creating more money, which is why inflation is a problem. It's a very severe danger.
Which is why
Powell owes money.
Yeah, which is why Powell isn't wrong or hasn't been wrong when he said the main reason he's not lowering rates yet is because inflation is still high. He doesn't want to add to inflation. Inflation sucks. It's really bad. It's the reason Biden or Kamala lost. Really, no bueno.
Okay, well, that was very instructional and educational. Thank you. I think we're coming up to the hour. Do both of you have any other beans that we can roast that we should?
I know Paul wanted to touch on it.
Yes. All right. That's right.
Oh yeah, Durham Annex. We should. I just wanted to it's just pretty incredible. But
you want to explain that real quick?
Some people say it's a nothing burger. I mean, I think it's pretty serious.
No, that was crazy. What came out yesterday?
I know it was crazy. I'm still piecing it together, but like maybe as a group we can fumble through what these revelations are. So, I mean, I don't know whether to believe the administration entirely on exactly how these documents were found, but according to the reports, Kash Patel, in the bowels of the agency found like a room with burn bags in it. Okay, the burn bags are like when classified materials to be destroyed, it's like put in this bag, and those bags are sectioned off to be destroyed. But no one got around to burning these burn bags, and they opened up a burn bag and
No way.
I don't buy this for a second.
But I don't think it matters, but I agree with you.
Yeah. So this is the lore that they're spinning. But in this burn bag, they found this annex to the Durham report on the Crossfire Hurricane.
Do you know who Durham was, Perseus?
I'm like, no, but I'm looking for something I could.
He was appointed by Jeff Sessions to investigate the Russia collusion hoax, and he was. I don't know if it was secretly appointed, but it was sort of under the radar. He was working for a while without a lot of press. He was hailed as sort of this badass, straight and narrow prosecutor guy. And never mind what happened to Sessions. But when the right and MAGA found out that Durham was doing this stuff, very excited, right? Because we had the Mueller report and then we had the IG report, which were both very damning of the Democrats. They were not, they exonerated Trump for sure. But when we found out that Durham, and there was also the other guy, forgot the other guy. He was doing another investigation. But Durham, when he finally released his report, which was during Biden, by the way, it was bad, but everybody was kind of disappointed. We were like, what? like there was more there. He didn't touch on some stuff. It turns out that he actually did do the work, but the Biden administration hid it. They took it out and they put it in these burn bags, supposedly. So
of course, with the collusion of the agencies, federal agencies.
So Durham report exonerates Trump?
It wasn't about exonerating Trump or not. It was about investigating Hillary, Obama, the intelligence community under Obama for, creating this Russian collusion hoax out of thin air, and then weaponizing the intelligence community and FISA warrants and all sorts of stuff to go after Trump.
And the impeachment, right? I mean,
all of it.
The impeachment. So, I mean, if you look at this thing and it ties it to Hillary from an email. Now, realize that some of the emails that are the smoking guns in this annex, this appendix, essentially, right, were found by Russian hackers. Okay, so because these are all, I don't know, like they say,
we have to put an asterisk on that statement as well. It's not because of you, but a lot of people believe that it wasn't Russian hacking. Well, there were two things, right? Podesta got his emails exposed because he fell for a phishing link that got his password. So they got his emails through there. The DNC emails they claim were hacked by Guccifer, the Russian. But a lot of people think that Seth Rich was the one that gave those to Julian Assange. So this is all, you know what I mean? This is all very complicated. Right?
Yeah. We should probably read the smoke or put up this, what's considered one of the smoking guns here, which is that ties it to Hillary.
Well, and not only Hillary, get this, Perseus, it ties it to George Soros directly, because his foundation was emailing with her and internal, like FBI and like Obama administration officials. And they're literally saying, this is not verbatim, but it's like, we're going to do this Russia thing. We're going to make it up. And then the intelligence community is going to, what did they say? Add oil on the fire of this and really make it a thing.
Yeah. I put it in the private chat if you want to pull up this.
Let me pull it up. Yeah,
it has what Eric's referring to. So Julia is Hillary's campaign manager, right? Is that just to get all the names right? I think that's who it is. Or one of her campaign staffers. Yeah. So so HRC approved Julia's idea about Trump and Russian hackers hampering U.S. elections. Okay, so at this point, it was generally accepted that the Russians hacked. Despite what Eric just said about Seth Rich, that was the general consensus at the time.
A narrative.
That was a narrative, right? So the idea is that, okay, we're going to tie this thing to Trump, and it's going to be a scandal at the level of the Olympics. And the Olympic scandal was the doping thing at the time, right? It was a global scandal. And then this is basically explaining how they're going to, with Hillary Rodham Clinton's approval, they're going to scheme up this thing, which is going to distract from her own email scandal. So this is the whole point of this is a campaign thing to turn the media attention away from her own email problems and make Trump the focus.
Okay.
With the there's another email as well as this. So with the which has the oil on the fire thing from the FBI.
So let me see.
Yeah, this is bad. And when this was unfolding, after Trump won in 2016, from November to January, and then they got Flynn fired for supposedly committing treason or some shit in the middle of the transition. And they released his transcript when he talked with, forgot the Russian's name, but it was literally just basic administrative transition talk. And, Flynn got bounced, and then they accused him of lying to the FBI, and then Sessions appointed Mueller. It was all based on this Hillary's made up dossier, this shit that they hired a disgraced ex spook from the UK who literally made up compromat and made up sources. And politics is a dirty game, but the problem is that it started off as Hillary dirt. They all knew it was fake. They all knew it was bullshit. But politics being politics, they also knew that if they put this out there or whatever, they probably get some traction on it. But what happened is they took this and they goosed it. And as they said, they put oil on the fire by involving the FBI, CIA, national intelligence, all these people who they knew, and they're in these emails, they're in these communications and saying, this is bullshit. We looked into this. It's fake. But what they did is they made a decision. They said, well, we know it's fake, but just to be sure, wink, 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 we should open up an investigation into this, because they knew that just by even merely opening an investigation, right? They can open an investigation.
They would poison the well.
Poison the well. And there was a big part of them. People forget this, but Trump was an outsider, right? Trump was somebody who had worked in the dirty business of real estate in Manhattan with the mob, all this shit for years, working with global, people. It's all icky, They had this feeling that if they opened the can of worms, that they were going to find stuff on Trump that they could use to beat him, and their overall theory was, we need to open that can. No matter how, no matter what, we need to get it open. And even if we do some stuff to get it open that's not quite above board, we will be forgiven for that if we find that Trump, killed and murdered a girl and buried her in the cement in one of his buildings in 1991. Right? They were so sure that there was dirt there that they were willing to essentially burn the credibility and weaponize our intelligence agencies and our FBI.
I mean, this is and also they set up, I don't know, this might have been known before, but I didn't know this, the whole meeting in Trump Tower with a Russian woman, forget her name, where they apparently she had dirt on Hillary and they met with her. That was a whole setup. That was an entrapment.
Absolutely.
That Fusion GPS ran a scam that through Hillary's law firm to basically entrap Trump by dangling something, and it didn't work because he didn't really even go for it.
That's right.
But the amount of dirty tricks here are so far beyond Watergate at this point. It makes Watergate look like the Keystone Cops. I mean, this is insane. Right. What's going on?
It was
here.
done
because
it wasn't just dirty tricks by a campaign, right? That's bad enough.
Right. It was the weaponization of the bureaucracy and the capture of the what people call the deep state. To use for partisan ends. I mean, it's the factionalism that the founders warned about.
Yep. And just to put a period on it, they have comms internally where they have meetings and in transcripts and things where they investigated this body of evidence. They determined officially that it was bullshit. There was nothing there. And then Obama and it seems like John Brennan said, you know what? No, we can make hay out of this. We need to redo, like they were essentially told to go back and redo the assessment.
Yeah.
And we're seeing now that there were a lot of people internally that were like, no, we can't do this. There's nothing here. We can't give it that kind of oxygen. That's not okay. But they did it anyway.
In the annex, there's actual reports, I mean, from the whistleblowers that show that they were being pressured by their bosses not to actually distrust this information and not to render their opinion that it was bogus. This is and of course the media. I don't. Maybe you've seen things, but I haven't seen the media of course. I mean, I'm not surprised. Touch this with a 10-foot pole. They're not giving it any oxygen, which makes me think that he's gonna have to. There's gonna have that this is serious. You can't rely on the media to do your work for you because the media is against you. So that's why you got to indict.
I agree. And here's the thing: Trump and the people around him know exactly what you just said is true, right? It's obvious this. Like the media's they're ignoring this. And you just have to think that they have some sort of strategy here to force the media to eventually have to look at this. And they started releasing. What do you say?
Unless they made a deal on Epstein. Okay, so this is where it gets right.
Okay, go ahead. I want to hear this.
I mean, we're like, well, we're not going to prosecute and uncover this dirt. There's different reasons, and that may be because some of the targets for these indictments, they know where all the bodies are buried, is one thing. And also, there may be a deal like, we're not going to come after you for this if you don't throw out the Epstein files. There's a lot of moving pieces that could be going on behind the scenes. So that's why I'm not. There's a reason why they might not see indictments that has nothing to do with whether or not it's a good idea on its own. So just don't get your hopes up, is all I'm saying, even though I think there should be.
Okay. Okay. This is so many moving parts, hard for me to track. But I'm the slow one here. But
there is one more thing that we should mention, and that was on the screen before, the critical infrastructure thing that Mike Benz is.
Wait, let me pull that back up again.
Because this is really interesting, and I think he has a point, despite whatever you may think of him otherwise.
So, yes, explain to us what is.
Okay. So, critical infrastructure threat was the same justification that was used on misinformation, right? For censorship and COVID and all that stuff. And this was the first, according to him, this is the first instance of that formulation.
Right.
The critical infrastructure. So the critical infrastructure would be, energy systems, roads, power plants,
right.
That kind of thing. The alliance of the internet and misinformation on the internet, supposedly, with this it ties it to national security in such a way that it allows you to create this narrative which justifies all this other crazy overreach that they did. So, like, this is kind of a big flashing origin story for this whole justification for what the Biden administration did later. I just want to make it look into this. I'm going to look more into this, find out, is this the first time critical infrastructure threat was mentioned? As sort of an offhand, just like, say something like this.
Absolutely. And they did. And it was absolutely used. Obama said it. And not only that, they expelled, tons of Russian diplomats from the United States based on this.
The internal politicking and attempted coup, I mean, that's what it looks like, has, international diplomatic
they didn't care.
Things
they didn't care.
That resulted from it. They didn't
That's
care.
Where, and there were people that were sounding the alarm at this point, like early summer or midsummer 2016. And they were right. They were just like, this is so dangerous. Like, not that, and of course they're like, if you say, hey, I don't think that Russia is really doing it to this extent. They're like, all right, you Putin lover.
Yeah.
Why do you're a Russian hack? It's like, what?
All that's
Russia.
You're just a puppet of Putin. And
yeah, man.
Everybody got slammed for that bullshit.
So is this story going to be the bookend of what started in 2016? Or it's still going to be more?
If they don't push it, it'll vanish. It'll go away in a few years. If they do push it and they get indictments, it could mean the end of.
I don't think there's going to be like it's been more and more and more every day. It goes back to my point. Like, I think that Team Trump knows what we know. They know how the media operate. They know what they're up against. They know that that CNN and NBC and the Washington Post, their instinct is to not cover this at all, right? And so they've had that cone for a long time of like, how do we get them to look at this? How do we get them to give this oxygen? How do we get this information to the normies? I don't know what their answer is, but it's an obvious question, and they have to do it. So I would bet that they have something up their sleeve. I wanted to bring this up real quick because I've brought this up before, but this is interesting to me. How many people did not read Hillary's book? Especially people in the political zone, because in the book, right, this book was written by a couple of journalists. I think they were like New York Mag guys. But they were embedded in the Hillary campaign with the expectation that she was going to win, right? So this was going to be this romping victory book, and it was until it wasn't, right? And they had to very quickly scramble to rewrite, or apparently they already had the ending kind of written, and then when she lost, they had to scramble and rewrite the last 2 chapters. But in this book, they detailed how the day after the election, and Hillary did concede, they had an all hands on deck conference call. And this was the campaign staff. This was, high level DNC people. And George Soros and his team were on the call. And they literally said, all right, we lost. What are the next steps? And the quote verbatim again in the book was, we got to move forward on this Russia thing. We got to, milk this for all it's worth. And I'm looking, and I read the book. I'm like, and I read the book, kind of in early 2017 after Flynn had been fired, after Mueller had been appointed, and all this stuff was burbling up. And I'm like, wait a second, anybody see this? Like this is their strategy. Like their strategy is this Russian, smoke. Anyway, it's in the book.
Yeah, I think I remember you mentioning that earlier show. That's crazy. I got to read that book.
So is this going to help this Durham report, critical infrastructure review, going to take some of the help men bring people back together in MAGA over the Epstein list? You think that will?
I don't think people are going to forget that. They're going to, the MAGA chuds, okay, I say that with all due respect, are not going to forget Epstein. Okay, Epstein is going to live on, and the demand for accountability on Epstein is going to persist. It's going to be a nagging, persistent thorn in the side of Trump until he does something about it.
Agree.
I think there's more of a structure to the Durham report story than there is in the Epstein list. So maybe people should just follow up with that more. And also the topic that we're talking about earlier, which I find interesting and fascinating, that I could follow, interest rate. And I really appreciate both of you helping me understand that. So, so was that your happy beans, Paul?
I just want to post a Sydney Sweeney ad for a happy bean.
Oh, yeah, I guess if that is still in the news cycle next week, maybe we can.
Okay, all right.
This is no offense, not
so much fun.
Not a reflection on you, but this is a stupid bean. Like, I just can't. It's just depressing that this is even a thing.
What, Sydney?
Yeah, this entire they essentially recreated an ad copy verbatim from like the Brooke Shields ads from the late 70s, early 80s. Jeans is an obvious pun. It's been used a bazillion times. And when you say somebody has good genes, you say that about people that are attractive, right? It's kind of a tongue-in-cheek, like, she's got good genes. But you also say that about people that are talented. Like I heard a sportscaster say that once about Ken Griffey Jr. He's got good genes, right? Of course he does.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, I was just going to play this while you.
There's nothing original about the ad. The ad is a throwaway. It's the culture comp. It's the meaning of the ad, the way it's being reacted to, the provocation of doing it, and I think that I kind of hope. And you were starting to see the same thing with the Dunkin' Donut. You're starting to see copycat ads now with Dunkin' Donuts and Arby's. That you're going to have troll. I call it trollvertising, right? You have this thing which is designed to stick in the craw of a particular constituency and rile up another constituency, and create this thing. And then instead of doing the wrong thing and apologizing, you're doing the wrong thing and doubling down to get attention. And I think you're going to see that. I kind of hope you see more of it, because it'll be a sign that things have changed.
Yeah. Maybe we can talk more about that in the next episode. Yeah, but I personally didn't think much of the Sydney. I didn't even know who she was until someone brought it up. But I just thought, from never mind the messaging, just from the production and the concept, if there's one, it just didn't seem to me as like anything groundbreaking and innovative. I guess it's innovative in that it is bucking the DEI trend, the woke trend. But is that really
like, it's
no?
On the face of it, the ad is
more significant than you guys.
It's not. You know what I mean? I think that's why it's so frustrating for a lot of us. It's not like the ad came out and was anti-woke, or poking fun at DEI, or you know what I mean? Like Sydney Sweeney is, I don't know what her politics are. She's a good-looking woman with big boobs and a nice butt. They put her in some denim and they, gave her some lines, and she sort of, stretched out, much like Brooke Shields we just saw. It's nothing.
Yeah.
It's nothing. The left made it into this offense, and it's just. And if you look at who's complaining about it,
they can't help themselves. That's the point.
The people that are complaining about it,
it's so anodyne, and they can't help it because they think if a white girl says she's got good genes, it means black people don't. That's the way they're going to take it, because they see eugenics, they see Nazis, and the memes around it, the actual way the waters are stirred up around it is hilarious. Okay, so like the scene from that scene from what is it, American History X, where Edward Norton is like,
oh good lord,
his wingspan, and he's got a Nazi tattoo, got a swastika tattoo. People are posting like, this is me going into American Eagle to buy jeans, because the ludicrousness of actually attributing some, Third Reich to this totally harmless ad, boring ad, is that's the point of it. And this is straight out of Rules for Radicals, but now the right is doing. And I actually think it's actually pretty good. I think it's healthy.
Well, I was going to say it was a little too verbose, and I thought that the kind of people that you're appealing to don't write essays in their head. Like Eric said, they would just notice the boobs, and it's a pretty girl, and that's it. That's the amount of
biology. Yes, that's the point. It's so simple.
The people writing essays in their heads are the ones who just hate that they're not her, and they always with the nose.
There's a lot of jealousy. Please, the women that are posting the angry responses. I mean, there's a thread there.
Yeah,
not to be unkind, but like there's a little jealousy there.
Always with a nose ring, and always with your BMI index of a certain number. It's very predictable, and always writing essays in your head. You're always walking around with an essay in your head. So for me, it was like, okay, who is she? And whatever, just get a life.
I just hope that she doesn't apologize, or you know what I mean, like, because they're coming after her personally. And
American Eagle did release a statement. Did you read the statement?
I thought that was fake.
I wasn't sure if it was fake or not. And I looked into it a little bit, and it seemed real, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is fake. I don't want to. You're right.
It was something that I read that I was hoping that they actually did, but there were a couple. I don't know whether to believe community notes, these days, but there were several community notes saying that this is.
Oh, okay, I missed those. Maybe I got in too early.
Yeah, well, the real headline for me with the whole Sydney Sweeney so-called controversy is that there's actually an ad agency out there willing to do this kind of thing, and I want to know who they are, because it's very interesting.
This is not that kind of thing. That's I think the main point here. This is not anti-woke advertising. This is not even being funny about it. This was a straight up ad that has a good looking girl saying some pretty.
Oh, gotcha. Eric saying that it wasn't during the creative brief. They said
no,
the anti-woke. It's gotcha. So I read too much.
Maybe, but this is a big this is the implication of this ad is it's okay to be white. That's the implication of this ad.
But Eric is saying that's not the case. Eric is saying
it doesn't matter if they intended it or not. It's now in the culture. It has
no. So we're saying two different things. You're saying how they're trying to spin it. We're talking about from sort of an advertising, conceptual point of view. There's no way. Look, American Eagle, they probably set out to do something that was sort of old school, right? Again, good looking girl. The vibe of the ad is kind of retro. I
can't believe it's not intentional. They must.
Yeah, Eric, because you know how casting calls go in our industry. There is a quota.
No, but
there's a quota.
They know when they pick in a white girl what that means.
There's sites dedicated to her boobs. This woman is super famous. She's a modern sex symbol. She's been on Saturday Night Live. I don't believe that American Eagle set out to do an overt anti-woke commercial. I do believe that they set out to potentially not embrace some of the tropes. They weren't trying to do a United Colors of Benetton. They weren't trying to do an ad like we've seen fashion do recently, which is, putting, severely overweight, multiracial people in clothes that they should never be wearing.
If you're not doing a trope, that's kind of a trope, though, because it dominates the industry so much.
But there's a spectrum, right? There's a spectrum. There's like, hey, we're going to sort of do an old school thing. We're going to put a sex symbol up there. We're going to dress her up, put her on a car, give her some copy, and boom, we're going to get back to our roots.
But that's a trope. Getting back to roots. That's
very reactionary. We're going to only cast a white person because she's white, and
yeah, I wouldn't say they're not doing it. They're not doing it because we're going to do a white person. They're doing they're doing it for the effect. I mean, I think they must have known the effect they would have.
I would bet they didn't predict the reaction. You can't write that ad and produce that ad and go, all right, let's get ready for the Nazi accusations.
Why don't we wait?
That's crazy. You can't predict people are going to be that fucking stupid.
I think I could say definitively maybe what their motive is if we know which ad agency did it. I think
look into it. We should. You guys should dig into your contacts and find out.
Because might be in house or something.
I know at least
it's not a complicated concept. It's not a high concept.
Okay, but
it's not even a great ad. Honestly, it's just it's like it's like showing a baby and a puppy in another ad.
Right, exactly. It's not creatively interesting at all.
No, you're right.
Why did they? And did they have foreknowledge that there would be something? And is there what I want to know what did they know and when did they know it when they made this ad?
Yeah, we want internal memos.
Yeah. Let's do that. I mean, which ads? Why aren't people actually? I don't see anything about what ad agency did it and why they did it. And
I want to
radio silence.
I can tell. I can hazard a guess whether it's Paul's right or Eric is right, just by which ad agency. Because again, most ad agencies, not all, have at least a DEI quota.
Okay, apparently it's an in-house team. American Eagles Outfitters in-house team.
Oh, it's an in-house. That changes it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you have management. I don't know who they are, but management's looking at the landscape and they're going, "Holy shit, people are tired of this other bullshit." And again, it's not that you have to go 180 degrees the other direction and like make fun of the DEI or overtly poke back at it. But all you have to do is go, okay, you know what? Let's go back to look what Budweiser did after they blew themselves up. They didn't start making fun of DEI or trans people. They literally just went back to Spuds McKenzie, and they went back to dudes drinking beer at a tailgate, right? Like that to me is what the Sydney Sweeney ad was. It was just sort of basic, American classic ad. That's it. There is zero chance that they thought that they were getting into this Nazi business. I bet that they did probably predict some PR, you know. And there's that adage like of, you know, all PR is good PR. I don't believe that. But in this case, it is. I think that they're getting a lot of press. The vast majority of it is positive. The negative press that they're getting is completely unfair. If I were them, I don't know what you do. I think you just ride it out.
I want to try to reach out to the creative director in an in-house American Ego and just ask them up front and say, hey, what's the big idea here?
Come on the show, talk about, I mean, it'd be amazing if I know they probably can't.
Well, how many people are watching this now?
Oh, they would never. No.
Oh, they would if the Spurs game on the show. Goddamn right they'd watch this show. We'd probably get
Oh no, they're not coming on the show because they won't let them go out.
I know they won't let them, but maybe we can get somebody. I don't know.
I'm gonna look it up. That's an interesting thing to look at. I want to, because it's related to what I do and what Eric does. So it's an interesting discussion here. So do we want to land this plane? Do we want to serve the happy beans? So I think that's enough happy beans. I think that was just talking about Sydney Sweeney makes people happy already. So that will suffice.
The right likes boobs. The left likes top surgery. Okay, that's all you need to know.
And writing essays in your head. Yeah, walking around writing an essay in your head. And nose rings, for some reason, I don't get that. But anyway, everyone, thank you for making MCS 46. Hope to see you next week. Have a good weekend.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.